Hello and welcome to another episode of ShowHammer, the online web show where we take a look at classic television. Now, today, as with the last few episodes, we're taking a look at the first few stories from Doctor Who, way back in 1963. Yes, it's gone on quite a while, hasn't it? Now, today we're having a look at The Edge of Destruction, and yeah, this is a filler story, written in 2 days. Now, Wikipedia actually says it was written in under 24 hours, but interviews with the writer do say he had about 2 days to write it, and I can believe that, to be honest with you. And designed solely as a way for the show to limp along to fill its original 13-week run without using up some of the budget from future episodes. The Edge of Destruction is a mess from start to finish, and let's take a look at it. Now, the original production run of Doctor Who is often said to have been 13 weeks, but the truth is it wasn't. The original production run of Doctor Who was 4 weeks. The show was going to run until the end of the Caveman story, and that was it. But partway through that story, it got expanded to 13 weeks, and to be honest with you, they already knew it was likely to be because they'd already started commissioning extra stories. That's how Terry Nation got the Daleks one done, for example. But the problem with 13 weeks is, even though they'd started planning other stories, there weren't enough of them actually scripted to fill that time. So, what do? Well, it wasn't possible to add 2 extra episodes to the Dalek story, and to be honest with you, it already had 2 episodes too many as it was, and they were already filming the Unearthly Child story with the cavemen, so adding in a couple more episodes to that would have been an absolute disaster. So what do you actually do? The answer is simple. You throw a 2-week filler together and hope that the goodwill built up by the emergence of Dalek Mania in the Daleks episodes would let the show coast along for a few weeks before a proper story could start. Yeah, I'm not joking about that. That is the plan that they had. And it worked, kind of. Although the resulting story is a complete mess. The performances in The Edge of Destruction are weak, thanks in the most part to every cast member being purposefully written out of character. Yes, you heard that right, purposefully written out of character. The characterization of each cast member is atrocious in these stories. The camera work just doesn't work, and several shots make it almost impossible to tell what's going on. The shot of the melted clock is particularly egregious in that sense, because it's almost impossible on its first watch to see what the camera is actually pointing at. Scenes are out of focus, the blocking of shots just has people standing around doing nothing in it, and the whole thing comes across as if the BBC has simply pointed a camera at the dress rehearsal. But having said all that, there is one excellent part to the story. It's the first time that the Doctor is properly called out on his self-centered actions and decisions by his companions. This wouldn't be the last time that it happened, of course, because getting called out becomes a common thing for future Doctors, even though he doesn't seem to ever actually learn from it. Maybe that's a character trait. But given how the Doctor actively changes his tune at this point, from being a space git to a slightly more amiable git by the end of the story, maybe just this once he actually listened. So yes, this is the story where the Doctor stops being written as if he's a colossal space bellend and starts being written as the Doctor. So there's that at least. Oh, and we get to see a few more rooms in the TARDIS for the first time, but unfortunately the show doesn't even manage to do that really interestingly, because the rooms we get to see aren't all that interesting, to be honest. This is the story that saw the first major complaints to the BBC about the show. In one scene, Susan attacks Ian and then threatens Barbara with a pair of scissors, chopping and slicing like she's holding a knife. Naturally, parents were not happy about this, and they didn't like the idea of their children being shown how to use a household item as if it's a weapon, and the production staff got a thorough telling off from the BBC high-ups for doing that. I can't say that I'm surprised, to be honest with you. It's absolutely not something that you would expect to see in a children's television show. And remember, at this point in the show's life, Doctor Who is thoroughly in the realm of being a children's television show. It would be quite a while before it moved into being a whole family production. And even that wasn't the end of the show's problems. The majority of the story simply doesn't make sense. The melting clocks are presented as something horrific. There's tense music, and both of the female characters scream in hysterics at it. Ian is presented as if he's a paranoid, threatening figure, in a drastic contrast to how he's been shown as an heroic action man so far. Susan comes across as a monster who may be possessed, before turning into a sorrowful wretch, really. And the only person who actually manages to say the same as has been portrayed so far is the Doctor, although even he changes by the end of the story. And let's be fair, it would have been hard to see him written out of character in this particular Paranoia Fest, since he's been acting paranoid and annoying since episode 1. The second episode of this two-parter is even worse than the first. It's a cavalcade of exposition that basically comes down to, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were the bad guy. I now realise that you aren't." And, "Oh dear, the ship's about to explode because the manufactured reason X, Y, or Z." Plus, a lot of melodramatic overacting. And in the end, it's all just a desperate scramble to reset everything by the end of this episode back to where everyone was at the end of the Daleks, so that the show can continue as normal. The entire episode is a mess. There are some nice bits here and there though, such as the line, "That's from when we went on an adventure in the fourth universe," which we never saw, but which adds a little bit more depth to the show by telling us that we aren't seeing every single adventure that the crew have had, even though each adventure that we have seen literally flows from one into another through the cliffhangers. So how did these other adventures happen? It's not really clear. There's also information about how the TARDIS works as well. The way the TARDIS reacts as if it's self-aware is nice, and it feeds into future stories, especially in the new Doctor Who series. There's also an explanation for why the central column goes up and down to allow some power out of the reserves, a little like how the spark plugs move up and down in an internal combustion engine, and it's nice to get those little bits of info, which work to present the TARDIS in a more grounded light, rather than just it works because the show needs it to. I'm not sure spending an hour watching 4 actors desperately scramble to fill airtime is a trade-off that we should be willing to accept for this information, though. Speaking of New Who just now also reminded me of one extra fun part to the story. The resolution turns out to be, "Oh, this button was held down too long." I'm not kidding, that is the resolution to the story, and it's the same explanation for how the TARDIS skipped into a parallel universe in the 10th Doctor episode, Rise of the Cybermen. So it's nice to see that Doctor Who continuity even reaches so far as to replicate the various ways that the TARDIS control panel can screw up. While it may be a fact that this two-parter was a necessary evil to allow the budget to be stretched following the great expense of the Daleks, and the Cavemen episodes, it nevertheless comes across as a muddled, boring mess. It is one to avoid. Oh, and the second episode mimics the final episode of the Dalek story in that the plot is resolved around 10 minutes in, and then you have to just meander to the end. So that's nice. So all in all, this is a mess of a story that never really finds its feet. I'm sorry to say that, and it coasts to the 25-minute mark in the second episode without any real sense of purpose. For that reason, I have to give it 1 out of 5 TARDISes. Sorry, but that's just how it is. And that is all we've got time for this week. So thank you so much for joining me and having a look at the 3rd ever Doctor Who story. It's a bit of a mess of a story, I know, but we've done it now. It's over and done with. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this. And if you did, remember to click that like button, share it with your friends so that they know a Doctor Who story that's possibly best to avoid. And do subscribe for future videos, because we are going to chart the entirety of Doctor Who from the very start to the modern day, so you know there will be more videos in the future. But until next time, I've been Zoe Cook-Robinson, you've been watching ShowHammer Doctor Who reviews, and I'll see you next time. If you liked today's video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. And an extra special thanks goes out to Chief89 and Tepic. Thank you.